Hello, this is C-Dub with ProducerClubhouse.com, and today we're going to be talking about how to find the correct background singer for your studio project. How do you do it? Let's talk about it. Alright, tip number one in finding a studio singer for your project, okay? And I think, to me, this is like one of the most important things. I always say that because like my first tip is usually the one that just right there, I just got to get it out. Alright, so, like, seriously, never assume that somebody can sing just because they told you they can or just because somebody else told you they can. Alright? Don't do that. Just because somebody say they can sing don't mean they can sing. I always like to try to request some type of link of them of something they've done in the studio just to see how their studio voice is. Which brings me to my next tip. Tip number two. Just because you heard somebody tear the roof off at a live performance and they had the crowd up and everybody was going crazy and all this kind of stuff, that does not mean they can sing in the studio. Singing in the studio and singing in a live performance, two different things. Kind of like playing, keyboard, piano, and the organ. It's three different instruments. It's three different approaches on each instrument. Just because they all have keys don't mean that you play them all the same way. So the organ has foot pedals. It's different. So just like studio singing and live singing is two different things. So just because somebody, like I said, is just ripping it up on stage and, it doesn't mean they can sound good in the studio. So I like I said, I like to request that they send some kind of work they've done. Now, everybody has been in the studio. So you kind of take a gamble with some people, but it's cool. But I would say just don't assume, okay? Don't assume that. And the best way to really try that out is to have rehearsals. And when you have rehearsals, you can kind of record even if you record just on your iPhone or something, or MP3 player or whatever, just to hear what it sounds like played back, you can kind of get a feel for what it's going to sound like in the studio. And that brings me to my next point. Make sure that whatever singer that you choose is punctual. And the way you can figure this out, there's plenty of ways. One way is when you have rehearsals, if they show up to rehearsal on time, they're probably going to show up to the studio on time. All right, studio time costs. Rehearsal time doesn't necessarily cost unless you're rehearsing in the rehearsal hall, and that costs. So you want them to show up on time to both. So if somebody is being late, like I said, at rehearsal, then they're going to be late. They're just going to be late. Okay, so kind of gauge that. You want to make sure that you have reliable people that that if you say the session starts at 6:30, they're going to be there at 6:15. All right, because that's time and that's money. And you got to make sure that you save all you can. All right. Tip number 4. It's kind of all tying in together. Make sure they actually know the material. All right. Make sure you find people who learn the material. All right. Everybody, some people, they have this thing where they just feel like they're just good, and you can send them a song and they won't even go over it until right before they come to rehearsal. All right. You can tell if they do. And if some people can actually pull it off and some people can't. But if you send somebody a song a week ago and rehearsal is today and they show up and they don't know the lyrics, they haven't been spending time with it, you might as well just go ahead and find somebody else. Okay, because they're not even taking your project seriously. So you don't want to trust them to have to come to the studio and take your project seriously because they're not taking it seriously from the start. So it's best to just find someone who's committed and who is trustworthy and who has integrity and will keep that with your music so that when it's time for you to go in the studio, they'll be the same way. And another thing to look for, if you're texting your background singer, say we got rehearsal this day, or you're calling them and they never answer the phone, or they're never receiving your phone calls, or never returning your phone calls, or returning your texts, beware. Because, something could happen, the studio time could change. How are you going to communicate with them? If the communication is failing, from the start, then it's going to fail all the way to the end. So kind of think about that as you're, going through maybe even auditioning people. If they don't come to the audition on time, or if you're calling them and they're not answering the phone, maybe they came to the audition on time and you want to actually call them to let them know they made it. And they don't even answer the phone, or they don't call you back. That means they have other things going on possibly in their lives, and they may not be able to commit to what you're trying to do. So you want to make sure you find, like I said, find committed people so that your project can be as one. All right, and my final tip, and this is one that you're going to have to kind of gauge in rehearsal. You can test this out in rehearsal. I always call it the singing test. All right, if you're in rehearsal and you're rehearsing to sing, right, and you say, sing this line, I won't go. All right, and they come back to you and they say, I won't go. You say, okay, maybe you didn't hear me. Let's try it again. So you say, I won't go. And they come back again and they say, I won't go. You need to tell them, you're right. You won't go to the studio. Because I'm telling you, you can already tell that they're possibly tone deaf and they're not hearing certain notes. And it gets even worse when they start arguing with you, telling you that they're hitting the right notes, but you're telling them that they're not. Those people, I'm telling you, you don't want to take chances with them in the studio, because if a certain part comes up that needs to be changed and they can't flow with it, then it's going to cost you money. All right, so keep that in mind. You want people that can change, they can adjust to whatever melodies you throw at them, whatever note it is, they can do it. So do that little test. It works. I'm telling you, it'll save you some money. I hope this helped you out. This is C-Dub with ProducerClubhouse.com.